So, a lot of people are speculating that Cursor, which is this AI code editor, or excuse me, an AI IDE, is going to be acquired soon. And the speculation is coming because a lot of people are saying that, agentic coding tools like Claude Code or, Codex, for example, are pretty much the future of software development. And it's to a point where you don't actually even need an IDE anymore. And so when you use Claude Code, for example, it makes it so that you don't actually need a subscription to Claude, or excuse me, to Cursor. Now, there's a lot of speculation because, Cursor relies on, models from Anthropic, OpenAI, and the reality is a lot of their usage is being subsidized by these big labs, right? Um, and it makes it so that uh, the ball really is in the court of these larger labs, as opposed to the companies themselves, right? And you know, it gets to a point where, like, when you really think about it, these big labs have the pricing power, right? And so it's kind of, I mean, it's a separate conversation, but it really makes you wonder, what the laws around this should be, because it's very clear that these labs are essentially platforms, right? Um, they're not products, yet it seems like they are providing the infrastructure to companies like Anysphere, which is, the company behind Cursor. Um, so they're providing the infrastructure, but then as soon as they find a business opportunity, they then start to compete with their own clients. And in other industries, this actually isn't allowed, but it is allowed in the AI world. So that's also a separate conversation to be having. But it's one of those things where it's becoming very clear that if if these companies want to succeed and they want to compete against the big labs, they really have to own their own infrastructure, right? In other words, they need to build their own models, and that's actually what the CEO of Cursor, or excuse me, the CEO of Anysphere, was saying recently. He was saying that they need to build their own models and they need to be the best coding models. That's probably not going to happen. Let's just be honest, and this is not anything against the team. They're very intelligent people, much smarter than I am, if I'm being honest. But to be able to compete with Anthropic and OpenAI, you need some of the best AI researchers in the entire world. It's not good enough to be an amazing software engineer, right? You need a deep domain expertise in AI. And a lot of the people who work at Cursor's headquarters are in their 20s, right? It's not like they're not scientists, right? These are people who are fresh out of university, or some of them have dropped out to work at this company. And so it's very different from Anthropic, where you have people, in their 30s and their 40s who've been studying this stuff their entire lives and are committed day in and day out to build the best models. Not only that, they actually have much more money. And so, they have billions of dollars to build their own models, whereas, Cursor doesn't, right? Um, and again, this really boils down again to the idea of, should these platforms be allowed to turn into products and compete with their clients, right? It's kind of like, to give an example, it's kind of like if Apple were to, release the App Store to everybody, and then, I build a company, like I build an app that becomes a company, and then Apple goes, okay, Cena just built a really good business. And so why should he make all the money, right? Like we should actually build our own app and compete with him and distribute it in a much more efficient manner. You know, the reason it's unfair is because now I've wasted years of my life working on a company that goes bankrupt. And it's not even my fault, right? It's an unfair advantage on the part of Apple. And so anyways, that's really me setting the table right now of, what is actually going on here and why Cursor seems to be in trouble. So I would actually argue that Cursor's probably going to be acquired soon. And the big candidates here are either Meta or Anthropic. And I'm more leaning towards Meta. I think that Mark Zuckerberg just has all the money in the world. He could spend whatever he wants. And if he were to acquire Cursor, you know, even just like if he were to spend, $30 billion to purchase this company and, let investors cash out, let the founders cash out, um, it really wouldn't be a lot of money for him, right? Like if it's like 15 billion in cash, 15 billion in stock, um, he could do it. And what, the benefit for the people at Cursor is that it's kind of like a get out of jail for free card, right? They don't have to compete with these big labs anymore because they can use, Llama, which is Meta's AI models, which, to be fair, aren't as powerful as Anthropic's or even OpenAI's, but it's better than nothing, right? They're not being squeezed on margins, and they're not going to be forced to run at negative margins in the future. In fact, I'm pretty sure right now they are. So um, they don't have to worry about competing on price with Anthropic. So that to me is a big one. Um, and then on top of that, what's really cool about this is the fact that, in theory, they could still use Anthropic's models, but now they just have unlimited capital to spend on it, right? And so in a weird way, it actually also benefits Anthropic because instead of getting their money from VCs, they're getting their money from, one of the biggest companies on the planet, which is just a tremendous cash cow, right? So now, why would this benefit Meta? Um, because investors will see that Meta is expanding into the AI space and using a product that people already use, right? So, you know, the fact that Meta has committed tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars at this point, to AI, you know, a purchase like this would justify that. And, they would say, hey, this is a real company making real money and our CapEx is going to support that further. We're going to take over the world. We're going to defeat Anthropic. We're going to defeat OpenAI, and we're going to build really good relationships with all these enterprise companies. To me, that makes the most sense. I think that everyone wins in that situation. Um, and then, Anthropic could also purchase Cursor, and I think the argument there would be by doing so, they are boosting their revenue, they're boosting their ARR, and they're expanding their reach as far as customers go. So it's not just revenue from Claude Code, it's also revenue from Cursor. And yeah, so we'll see what happens. I think that, like I said, it'd be very interesting to see. Um, but yeah, that's my prediction. I think Meta's going to win in this case. I definitely think that they're going to make this purchase. Again, it's pure speculation, but that's what I think. And and then again, Anthropic could do it for, the revenue, the reach, and then also the brand, because Cursor is such an enormous brand to the point where Anthropic could purchase it for, $15 billion, dollars, for example. Maybe not 30. That might be a bit too much for them, but they could do it for 15 and do it mainly for the brand, mainly for the name, because it's one of the biggest names in all of AI right now. So that's what I think, and yeah, we'll see what happens.